In this video I'll make multiple things, and I want to start with a repair of my strap for Hasselblad. This is original strap and I have a problem with the rivet on it. Probably this is not the best shoulder strap ever, but it's original and I prefer to repair stuff than buying the new one. So I have a small riveting set and a small hammer, and I will try to repair this small rivet with a solid kind of a brass rivet. It was actually not so easy to undone this rivet what I have already on a strap, but as you can imagine, just take a look on it, I cannot trust it anymore. And with the small repairs, as you can understand, if you work with the old cameras, old equipment, you just need to get your hands on it and try to repair as much stuff as you want. So starting like this from the small stuff, you later can even go with the repairment of the tools and repairments of the cameras and small fidgets, which is actually no longer available for your darkroom. For this small project, I will use solid metal rivets just because I can, and it looks much better and it's a little bit, handmade look on the final product. And secondly, what is also important for this particular application, it's much harder to break than in comparison the rivets which you make with the pistol. So idea is simple. So we have this nail made from copper looking metal, but in reality this is aluminum alloy of copper. So it means it's not really rusting and not really create this greenish tint from the copper parts. And I have a washer which is actually smaller size than the middle portion of this nail. You have this small riveting tool, and the main idea, you need to push the initial washer to press it between the two parts of the leather and make it firmly tight. Unfortunately, I don't have a proper nail cutter, but I anyway need to cut only 2 pieces, so I will not buy it, I will just use what I have on hand. So I'll use these small files and short down the nail to the proper length to make the final rivet. What is also important in this case, and you will see it later, I need completely round and completely flat side, which goes to the camera. So with the opposite side of the tool, you actually setting up the rivet and you're creating the small mushroom on top of the washer, and in reality your washer is already set. But I additionally will create the flat smooth surface with the round side of my hammer. And I really like the final result, so it looks like a brand new, and at the moment I just need to make the same procedure from opposite side because I have exactly the same problem with the rivets. My Hasselblad is actually 501C, so it's not crazy old technology, and at least from my point of view, when I bought it, it looks like a brand new from the box. But I for sure can say it was used because of this strap. But as always, like things bought from Japan, it was amazingly prepared for sale. So I have no problems anymore, and I have only one problem with my Hasselblad at the moment. Sometimes I have a lag on the mirror flap back. And I'm not sure if it's a problem with the magazine or with the Hasselblad, because at the moment everything works perfectly fine without any film inside. So probably it's a tension on the film, or the magazine itself needs a little bit of love and lubrication, I'm not really sure. But sometimes I just have a semi-stuck mirror, so it unflips after a few seconds. And as I said before, this time I will try to shoot more black and white because I really like the medium. And I still have this Fomapan film, which I get on the Christmas from the Secret Santa. And I'm completely not experienced with the different types of black and white, especially films. And as you can understand, it's not really a huge amount of different types of medium for 120 film. On this particular film, what I don't like, the base of the paper. It's actually not really thick and probably not cut properly. But you can imagine this is a cheap film and it's not really up to the standards of crazy expensive Portra or something like this. And as you can imagine, with the semi-modern cameras, even from the Hasselblad, it's much easier to load everything on the spool and on the roll with a semi-automatic loading from 120 film. But why I like this camera, it's fully manual. Yes, it has a corks, it has a multi-function system with a separate back, separate middle, and shutter in the lens. I actually really like this camera, but unfortunately I still don't have any good scanning solution for 120 film. So for now, let's finish the loading and go in a darkroom and print some more photographs from my color medium format film. Let's start with the exchange of the 50mm lens to the 80mm lens. And at the moment I actually dreaming about the separate place for my darkroom or the room itself where I can set up my YouTube setup and the darkroom setup. So I will use the same chemicals what I have for Array 4 and I develop everything in a Yoba drum. Probably in the next videos it will be upgrade of my darkroom. So please consider subscription and any type of support for my channel. After doing some experiments with the black and white, I actually understand what I don't like about my color photography and color development and color printing setup. In particular, I don't like this circulator. This Cinestill circulator is actually plastic junk and annoys me a lot with the noise and actually ruin the sound in this video. So in future, this is one of the upgrades which I for sure will make. But for now, let's load 120 film in my film carrier. So I'm using hair spray, so dry shampoo to protect my top panel from the Newton rings. And I'm still cannot find the good quality and good condition anti-Newton ring for the top plate in my Dart enlarger. So I think if you're choosing the enlarger at the moment, I think it's better to look for the Kaiser one. Because some of the parts is actually still in the production and you can easily buy it even new. So I'm still thinking about the more modifications for my darkroom, make it more mobile, more modern. And I think for most of the people who still printing from fully analog process, you anyway print it in the not professional environment and you actually print it in a bathroom, and it's a lot of the people who actually get stuck with this exact problem. So it's quite important to modernize our industry and make different solutions what actually works in the modern society and modern approach in the photography. For example, yesterday I saw one channel when the guy is actually painting with oil and he actually combined the drawing with the iPad on top of the oil paint and make a decisions with a combined process. But today I also want to repair my old standing problem with the color calibrator. It's actually create a lot of problems with the sticky needle, with the measurements. And as I said before, inside the calibrator we have this RGB wheel and the retro old school PCB, which is actually drawing by hand. And as you can understand, probably even this Philips photovoltaic chip, which is actually measuring the light intensity, was also made by hand and drawn by hand. So I have a first problem is this ground plate is actually sticking out and shorting the power. So it's a bad assembly. And I have actually this strange glass plate, which is filter on top of the photovoltaic cell. And in the side of this glass, I actually have a strange red light. I still don't know what is exactly this light is doing. Probably it's just adding some known amount of red light. So not sure if this is crazy retro technology as you can understand, and it's almost impossible to find any replacement for these parts. For sure what I can do is just create a new PCB board for everything what you see here on the screen. But I think the effort to just create the new tool is much easier and much better in the modern world. And this is one of the projects which I actually working in the background. It's moving not really fast, but probably in future videos, if I have a little bit of success with the measurements, I will show what I actually done. But for now, because I removed the middle pin from this wheel, I also want to clean up the lenses and clean up the filters. And after final assembly, I just want to check if everything works before I put all the screws inside. And because all of my calibrations is completely off at the moment, I want to start with the completely ground printing, so I will find the exposure first. And for this I'm using my test printer, and once per 5 seconds I just close down the window. And after it I make a quick development to find out what is the optimal range for exposure. As you can understand, the paper, what I'm using, this is industrial color paper, and the emulsion on top is actually quite sensitive, and probably it's too sensitive for the home use. Not sure about the exact numbers of the millijoules per square centimeter what you need to expose to the paper, but for sure it's more sensitive than the black and white paper, like a 2 stops or even more. From one side, it's really good for the industrial use because your paper is always inside the tool and never see the daylight. But for manual printing in a darkroom, I personally prefer less sensitive paper because the light amount is not a problem for us. Maybe only if you go with an extremely high scale of printing. So it means, for example, your safe light should be completely dimmed and it takes more time for your eyes to adapt to the darkness. So you need to care more about the small LEDs or even small light what you have on the timers. So as always, this is the same practice what you have with a highly sensitive color paper like Portra 800. So the light leaks, especially with a 120 film, can create a lot of problems in your life. As you can see here, I have a 5, 10, 15, 20 and so on seconds of exposure. And the 10-second exposure looks the best. So I will put the settings in my lab book and continue printing from there. The next step is actually calibration of color. After I put the 10 seconds, I print 2 test strips in the same drum, and I go with the direction of decreasing one filter, which is magenta filter, and the second filter, which is yellow filter. So let's dry up the drum with the cloth and dry up the prints on the wall and inspect what is the optimal position for my print. It's actually much better to make the steps in both directions, but because I have experience, I already saw I need to go a little bit down with the both filters. But because we have a one static channel, which is cyan channel, and you symmetrically move 2 channels, which is yellow and magenta channel, you can find the optimal position in the triangle of color. So let's make a bigger print and check if I have a color cast and if our exposure looks correct. This print is actually not really representative and not really easy to print in a darkroom. You have not a lot of color and it's mostly white and gray, and even small shift in color actually looks really bad on this type of prints. In this case I make a small correction in the magenta, so I bring it down, so increase the number on the filter. So for this particular print I want a little bit of warmth, so I decrease exposure time by 2 seconds and decrease the magenta, so increase the filtration on magenta by 2 points. And I get this final really good print what I really like. It's actually, I don't know why, but it looks for me more not like a Portra 400, it looks a little bit more like a Fuji colors. I don't really have a lot of experience with the Fujifilm 400H, and for now it's already no longer exist. But the mood and the colors and the faded whites looks close enough in my experience. At least from these 2 pictures you can clearly see I have warmth from the Kodak at the moment, and I remove completely this magenta cast on the whole picture. Maybe it's not completely balanced, but I really like the result, and as a picture itself it looks really great. So and now let's try and make one small print with a glossy paper, and because I have a first part of the glossy paper which is cutted bad, I can use it for different types of test prints and different types of applications. And from now on I just want to cut it and make a little bit different crops and take a look if I have different results and feel from this type of picture. With my new cutter I will cut it 10 by 15 and make a small postcard from this print. And as you can understand, because it's a medium format print, I have a lot of details and the sharpness, especially in the middle portion of this print. So I don't really like the pictures without the borders, but this particular one looks great and I really like the result. The next step is apply our calibration to Color Calibrator. So I put my setting in the time, pop up the diffuser, and actually turn on the enlarger and find the middle point of our print. On the cyan channel, I put my calibration wheel to the position when I have a 0 point on the needle, switch it to the magenta channel and do the same. And once again, I have a problem with the magenta channel filter. As you can see here, it's almost limited to the end. And inside this photo head, I actually have adjustment screw on this resistor there. I completely have no idea what is exactly this resistor do. So I just remembered the position and tried to move it back and forward, and it doesn't really change anything. I think it's just the calibration for bias voltage on the photocell there. Because it was manufactured whatever time ago, probably even manufacturing standards and compatibility of this particular things was completely wrong and off. So let's transfer these settings on a new print and try to make additional exposure and check if we have calibration correct and if we don't have any problems with the rest of the colors. So for this particular print, I make the first test print from the strip and try to find out what is the color cast I have. And let's clearly see I have magenta color cast again. And this is mostly because my wheel on the magenta channel is completely far off from the calibrations what I want to make. So I print the test print. And from this one, you can clearly see I have, with a step of 5, too much magenta filtration. So I need to dial down by 10 points. And sometimes you need to be careful because I put the settings from the yellow channel and not from the magenta. So I quickly fix it and make a print which is size bigger than the initial one. And because this particular print is actually size bigger, you can clearly see all the texture and all the deviation in colors if they exist. I really like these two prints what I make today, and as always you can find all of my prints what I make in these videos on my web shop. Thank you for watching, for support, consider a subscription, and see you in the next videos.